So here they are, my new shock absorbers. These are Progressive 412s. This particular shock is 12 inches. My previous shocks were 11.5. And they're standard duty. They look great. And they ride amazing. Best upgrade yet on this bike. Very happy with it. Hey guys, out here taking a Sunday night ride. Mid-September. Real hot weekend, but the humidity finally broke, the temp dropped, and air is nice and cool. I am super happy right now with an upgrade I just did on my bike, and that is my rear shocks. When I got this bike last year, within the first month, probably the first 2 weeks of riding it, I was like, man, I gotta get a better seat. I mean, if you've watched my previous vlogs, you've heard me talk about my seat enough times. That was a very important upgrade for back support reasons and all that. Anyway, even with the nicer seat, another thing that I've been thinking about for a while is my rear suspension. This is such an uncomfortable bike to ride. In the beginning I didn't care because it was new, it was the first motorcycle I ever had, but I'm putting in 120-mile round trips to work a couple times a week, or just like right now going out on a ride like this. I mean, this road isn't too bad, but there's lots of bumps and stuff, and the highway, forget it. There's these, you know, speed bump things where the blacktop is kind of protruded upward, and you hit those things at highway speed. I literally have been lifted off the seat, you know, launched in the air a few inches. And so quick, you know, early research on the subject pretty much said, yeah, the shocks that come stock on the Sportster are really horrible. So I was like, yeah, you know, that's right. But for some reason, I never replaced them. There was always something else I felt was more important that I needed to do first. Lighting, windshield, you know, some mechanical things that needed being done. So a few weeks ago, I had a particularly bad ride. I mean, I came out of work, I got on the bike, and I wasn't even halfway home, and I was just in so much pain, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I need to do something. On the one hand, like, everybody seems to say progressive shocks, you know, best upgrade, you know, make your bike feel great, blah, blah, blah. Then there's other people, oh, you know, progressive are garbage. You know, I can't even believe people think those are good shocks, you know. And they're recommending Rycor, which are like $600 or something. Olin air shocks. I mean, I'm not spending close to $1,000 upgrading the suspension on this bike. It's just not going to happen. I don't have that kind of money, and if I did, I would save it and put it towards another bike. So, all that said, I bought a set of progressive shocks. The ones that I had on the bike, the stock Harleys, are 11.5 inches, which is very short to begin with. Josh, my friend, has the Roadster. Those have 13-inch from the factory. I didn't want to raise the bike up noticeably. The longer the shock, the more travel you have, supposedly the better, softer suspension, whatever. I ended up going with 12-inch. I figured a half-inch more travel, that's got to be better. And just the fact that they're progressive shocks has to be better than the factory shocks. So that was what I thought about going in. You know, it was a decision between 12 or 12.5. There's also standard duty or heavy duty. I went with the standard. I'm 190 pounds, give or take, and take usually. And I definitely didn't feel I needed heavy duty. Okay, so the shocks come. Very easy install. The hardest part was getting the bolts out, which I was just going real easy with, because they're Torques, and those things just look like they want to strip so bad, you know. So I went real easy with the Torques. I got all 4 of them loose. It was very easy to do with the floor jack. So the new shocks were installed literally in like a half an hour. Now, I had my old shocks. There's 5 positions for the preload, or the cam setting. And that's where you can adjust the length of the spring. And I completely did not understand how that's supposed to work. On my old shocks, they were set at 3 when I got the bike. The guy I bought it from was like a big dude. So I played around a little bit, and it seemed like 2 was probably the best spot to put it. Well, even at 2, so they were horrible. So anyway, I get these new shocks, and I'm thinking that I want to put them at the very lowest setting, no preload, position 1, softest ride. That was my problem right then and there, thinking that that was the place to start. I took it out for a ride, and I literally like wanted to cry. They were absolutely no better than the stock shocks, and I mean absolutely no better. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You know, I got them for as cheaply as they can be gotten. So, you know, it was $230. And you can't return them once you put them on. And I was stunned. I'm like, I can't believe there's no improvement at all. So I rode it to work and back, which was like 120 miles, like I said, and just totally dejected, you know. So I was thinking, do I try 12.5s? Do I just put the original ones back on, you know? So I posted online. I had posted online that I was getting the shocks, and a couple of people were like, hey, you know, let me know how this works out, because I'm thinking of getting them too. So I post this, you know, commiserating, oh, you know, woe is me, it's so uncomfortable, my hiney hurts, you know. And people were like, oh, that stinks, you know, I was really hoping these were going to work out, because I wanted to get them and all that. And so one guy on HD forums was like, don't give up on them. Go back out, adjust the preload setting, and try position 3 and take it out for a ride. And I'm like, yeah, like that's gonna work, you know. So I go down to the garage begrudgingly, and when you adjust this thing, what you're doing is you're making the spring tighter, which would be something you'd do, for instance, if you had a heavier load or a passenger. So in my incorrect thinking, I'm reasoning that this is just going to make the ride even more uncomfortable because the spring is shorter and tighter and blah, 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 blah. So I get on the bike. I'm not even out of my community. It's like 1.5 miles where, you know, 25 miles an hour is the speed limit. I'm not even out of the community, and I can tell this bike feels different. I'm like, this is interesting. So I get to the main road, like this road I'm on now, and I'm stunned. I couldn't believe it. It was like a different bike. Literally, I can't use enough drama to describe it. I couldn't believe it. It felt amazing. All these little imperfections in the road, which were bouncing me up and down and basically, you know, making me feel like somebody was spanking me the whole time I was riding, were gone, you know. And when I would hit one of these really hard bumps, obviously you'd still feel that you hit a bump, but it wouldn't feel like somebody cracking me in the behind with a baseball bat or something. And I'm not exaggerating, man. Hitting some of these things in the road around here was painful, really painful. So I then went down to this road, which is, as far as I know, the worst road in the county. It's a section of Silver Lake Road that goes for about 8 miles out to Route 402. It is horrendous. There's cracks, ruts, dips. I mean, every horrible thing in a road, it's there. And it was awful, but I'd ridden on that road twice before with this bike with the old shocks. And after the second time, I said, I will never ride on this road again. Until they pave it, I will never ride on this road again. Well, I rode on it last night. I'm not planning to go back again until they pave it, but I survived. You know, it was incredibly different. And so right now, like, it got to the point when I would think about taking a ride, just like, oh, you know, I'm going to go for a ride this weekend. It would immediately be like, but I can't really go that far because it's just so uncomfortable. I mean, it was really at that point. I could ride this thing. I'm going to Maryland tomorrow. I could ride this thing to Maryland right now. I mean, it is so great. It is just so great. So how can I not be happy about that, right? All right, I gotta pull over here and grab a pass for this bridge, and we will resume shortly. Whew. All right, we're back. Look at that river, folks. Delaware. It's like glass. Wow. That is so beautiful. Man, I wish I could just stop and get some video of that. All right, so it's euphoria. I mean, I can't believe how great this bike feels. So knowing what I know now, I would have bought these shocks the day I put a deposit down on this bike. I can't believe I went like 12,000 miles bouncing around on those horrible factory shocks. So if you are thinking about, you know, I need a better ride, I can't recommend these things enough. There's lots of different options for spring height, heavy duty versus standard, and things like that. And you know, I got the model 412, but there's plenty of other models, you know, more expensive and all that. But I mean, for cheap entry-level shocks, just really amazing the difference in the ride. I've never ridden on a Road King or, you know, something like that, and you know, they're probably more comfortable, but I have to say that for the first time in as long as I've had this bike, I'm no longer thinking about what it feels like on my rear end anymore. Now I can just ride it and be irritated with things like people doing 30 and a 50. Step on it here. So that's my exciting news. I'm not going to be able to ride for a few days, like I said, because I'm going to Maryland. So I'm heading over to New Jersey. I haven't been over here in a while on my bike, and I'm just going to take a nice long ride. And there was just one thing I wanted to say here at the end. Today is September 11th. 2016. It's the 15th anniversary. Big thing, obviously, in the world, in the country. I just saw some idiotic comment someone posted online the other day about, you know, people gotta let it go. It's been 15 years. A very dear friend of ours lost her stepfather this year. He was a New York City firefighter. He was at Ground Zero on 9/11. He succumbed to cancer a short time later. It was recognized that his cancer was a result of the effects of that day. But he suffered a terrible illness, and in the last years of his life, it was pretty horrible for him, and obviously very horrible for his wife and children and grandchildren who we know that he left behind. So the point of my saying this is that it may have been 15 years ago, but for some people it's today. You know, it's still like it just happened. So there are tragedies every day, not just through things like terrorism, but even the loss of a family member. Like my wife and I lost our only son just over 4 years ago, and it still feels like it just happened. I just feel bad for those who are suffering today. So I guess that's where I'll end this. I hope everyone's doing well. Till next time.